quite a stir in the community, and we're excited to have everybody here. How we're going to present that is Mr. Wilson is going to make a statement or two, and then we're going to open it up to the public. Anybody that would like to comment, please come down to the microphone, state your name, and your comment, whatnot. Please be respectful of other folks. Please limit it to 2 or 3 minutes. You know, we don't want to be here all night, but we want to hear from you. And then after that, after all public comment, we're going to turn the time back over to Mr. Wilson, and then he'll make a few comments, and then the board will make a few comments. But that's how we're going to handle this next agenda item. Please be respectful of other folks, and remember that we don't get paid a whole lot up here. So with that, we'll turn the time over to Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. And I do appreciate the school board and their service, especially Bill and Carol being willing to come in and serve, and for David and Nolan for the many years of service that they provided. Also to the community. You know, this shows that you care about our school and our community and the special place that this is that many of us call home, and for many of us have for many generations. As I was reviewing information for this decision, it's been an interesting month getting feedback from community members, alumni, going out and meeting with the Shoshone-Bannock tribal leadership, getting a letter of support, 1 from them and 2 from the Nez Perce tribe up in Lapwai, Idaho, and getting really mixed reviews from parents, from students, people in the community that support this change, those that are strongly opposed to this change. And I do hope that because you care and you're passionate, you feel like we listen to you. That being said, hindsight is a beautiful thing. And as I've gone through this month, I have listened and reflected on the decision that I've made, and I recognize not just my deep heritage in this community, but how committed I am to the school district. Not just where I work, but the fact that I send my children to school here every day. And I trust teachers and bus drivers and principals and counselors with the safety of my own children. So that being said, if I would have put my teacher hat on a month ago, it may have been better to ask the question of the staff and of the community, should we change the high school mascot? Why not? Unfortunately, being in administration too many years, I put my admin hat on and I looked at an issue, looked at information, made a decision, and am ready to move forward. So that hindsight and that reflection over the last month is something that I'm always trying to evaluate myself and how I can do a better job in serving this school district and this community. So I want you to know I recognize that I probably got ahead of myself on this one. It's important for me to listen to feedback from the people that pay the taxes to pay for the schools, of which I live here and I do so as well, of the people that trust me and the rest of the staff with their children. This was not something that I took lightly. This was not something that I was flippant or assuming that I represent all alumni, assuming I represent Native Americans. I don't represent anybody else but myself. But in that, I take the responsibility of making decisions for the school district and moving the school district forward. And I've reflected on my own time going through Teton High School, graduating in 1988. And the reason I am an educator is because of the experiences that I had in high school and the profound impact that coaches and teachers had on me when I was a teenager. But we are always changing, and we are always evaluating and trying to do things differently. Just a couple of examples. When I was in elementary school, there was a young man who was my age who had Down syndrome. He was in school for a couple of years in elementary school, but by the time we got to middle school and high school, he wasn't in school anymore. I don't know where he went to. I do now that I have been able to communicate with his family, but as we went through school, special education students with very high needs were not part of our regular classroom experience. They were segregated, they were separated, and however their needs were met, they were met. I do not have an experience in middle school and high school of special ed students being in my classes. Another thing that's changed is it used to be called high school initiation. And for many of us that went through, you can think back to what that experience was. It was very memorable. If you wanted to remember it or not, it was imprinted pretty strongly in your brain what that experience was. And it was great, and I enjoyed it. It was part of being a freshman and putting up with the seniors in that experience. It was public humiliation. Today it would be called bullying and hazing. The school district would get sued and staff would get fired if we did those kinds of things in our school district today. So I recognize tradition and the importance of heritage in our community, but I also think there are a lot of things that need a serious evaluation about why we do it and what it means and how we can move forward if something can be offensive. And the more research and information I looked at with having a mascot with the name of Redskins is offensive to others. It's not offensive to everybody. It's not offensive to all Native Americans. I've spoken to many of them. Some of them think it's an honor and it is prideful and it recognizes that heritage of our community. I've spoken to those people. And I've spoken to many who have said it's offensive that the name was generated when the colonists were killing and scalping Indians and bringing their scalps in to be traded. And some think it refers to the color of Native American skins. And as I looked at that, I don't see any other high school mascot that has white skins or brown skins or pick any other demographic that you have. So from that, I made the decision that we should have a mascot that can be seen in a positive and respectful manner to everybody. It shouldn't be something that is offensive to others. That's why I made the decision that I did. Again, in hindsight, probably a conversation and more time and more feedback from more people probably would have been a better approach to take. My intention was not to make people mad. If my goal was to increase attendance at school board, I think I met that goal, but this isn't definitely the way to do it. So from that, I am listening, and I've worked to respond to anyone who has called me, anyone who stopped in my office, anyone who sent me an email directly. And I've heard from people all over the country. I've been on the phone with people from Seattle to Florida, San Francisco to New Jersey. Some are alumni. Some have skied at Targhee or fished on the river. Some own property here and are only here a few weeks of the year. Probably last week when it felt like half the world was here. And different opinions about this issue. It's very divisive. From the feedback I got, when people do not agree, is it right or is it wrong? It's a very mixed review. So from that, I do appreciate that you're here, that you care about Teton High School and our school district and our community. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll open up to public comment. Please come on down and state your name in front of Mike, and I'm going to offer to Paris Pinfold to come on right on down. You may want to make sure he was on, so if you want to get down the line, we'll make sure you're on. And we'll call this one microphone number 1, and we'll call this one microphone number 2. So, microphone number 1.
Thank you very much. I usually don't come out to these forums and speak in public because I was born a redhead and I have a redhead's temper, so I apologize in advance. But I'd like to say that I'm 1/8 Eastern Band Cherokee Indian, and I'm proud of that. That's enough to live on a reservation should I choose. I want you to know that I'm extremely offended by you changing the Redskin name. It's extremely prideful to those of us who are of Native American heritage. Also, you may not get paid very much, but Mike gets paid a good deal. And he should have listened. I've talked to people in your ward that said you were impossible to have a conversation with. All I have to say is I'm really ashamed of you. There's a lot of money that has gone into this, and we all feel this very strongly. And I apologize for my outburst, but thank you very much.
Mr. Henry, microphone number 1.
First thing I'd like to mention, before you do anything, you ought to go over to Star Valley and see what they did on their graves. They come up with the same thing, and it lasted about 2 years, and they went back to the graves. I think it ought to be an honor to be a Redskin. Everybody was hooting and hollering for them instead of degrading them. I think the name Redskins should stick. If it don't stick, I don't think you should use taxpayers' dollars to do away with the Redskins and all the names and everything. I think that should come out of your pocket or anybody that follows you. Another thing, you say degrading. I heard this English second language. And to me, probably half of you don't remember what our GIs went through in World War II to keep us from speaking Japanese and German. And now, you say English second language? Now, if that isn't degrading, I don't know what is. But I do think that if you change, you ought to be held responsible for the dollars, not the taxpayers. Just because you work for the school board and the school system, it's still taxpayers' dollars. And I, for one, will be one guy that will want to see how this money's spent if it's changed. If it costs me some money, I'll be right after you if I have to get an attorney. So, by saying that,
get some public input. Now, this is the first public input we've had, I think. I've been gone, but I heard in papers that where you indicated that you were making the decision yourself. Now, after 103 years of this mascot, how in the world did you make that decision without public input? That's a question I'd like to have you respond to.
Arrogance. It's called arrogance.
Well, we're not going to say that. I know Marty very well. And I just know that when we pass a school on, what you do, you go out in the community, you get the support, and then they support you and pass the bond. That's the way we do things in America, I think, is to involve the public. Now, I talked to some administrators and teachers who have been associated with Teton High School for a lot of years, dating back into the 40s and 50s, and I go back to the early 50s in my experience at Teton High. It was always an honor to be a Teton Redskin. I was always respectful of that name. It had no connotation that was disrespectful to the Native Americans. In 1965, my wife and I brought 3 Native Americans up here from Navajo to work on various farms. One was named Melvin Sosi, stayed with my dad for about 2 years, went to Teton High School. I'll never forget the day he came home from school and he said, "I made the basketball team. I'm now a Teton Redskin." He said it's an honor to be a Teton Redskin. Now we're dealing with some deep-seated, long-lasting memories of this mascot. I mean, this is somewhat of the foundation. There was no disrespect ever. In fact, the administrators that I talked to, who had been involved in this school district for years, indicated he had never, ever heard anything disparagingly or against the Teton Redskins mascot from anybody in the district. Now that covers a period of maybe 60 years. I was here 60 years ago, and it was always a pleasure and an honor to participate as a Teton Redskin. And I support the Teton Redskin. Now, one statement I'd like to read. Got a lot of notes here, we don't have time. Now, the teachers here have received a pay cut, is that correct? This past year or coming up year? Is that right, Doug? aids were released because of funding. Other programs may have been cut because of funding. And now we're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars. Tens of thousands equals 100. Yeah, do it. Tens of thousands of dollars to remove the logos, the uniforms, the insignias, and whatever associated with that beloved and revered mascot. This is deep-seated. I don't know whether you are aware of that. I wish you would have said in the beginning, I have an idea. We're going to put this out for public input right off the bat, instead of, at the last, at the end, to say, okay, there'll be a meeting for an hour and a half, where you have an opportunity to give input. That's not enough time to make this kind of a decision. Now, my last statement, and I won't read that word there. Are we that autocratic that one district employee can change a century of an honored and revered mascot without adequately providing public opportunity for public discussion? And the school board will stand by and accept that? Thank you.
Chairman Peterson, is this a pacification meeting?
If you want to make a comment, please state your name.
Hanson, you know my name.
Mr. Hanson, I know, before the record, we need your name stated.
Okay.
And this is not, if you want to make a
I
comment.
can't ask a question.
No.
You can't answer a question. I was wondering if this was a pacification meeting or if this was one to make a decision about this situation. That's the question, and you can't answer it. So I get the idea that you've already made the decision, which is too bad. But you're the chairman of the board. Did you hire this man? Can't answer that question either. Okay. Jeez.
We're not up here to get into debate or a dialogue. We're here to
Okay.
listen to public comment.
You are the chairman of the board of schools for Teton County. You hired this man, and if it would have been in an industry and he took that kind of responsibility, he would have been fired in any other industry in the world except the school industry. You should have done your job. You didn't do it, and it should have been done. I told my dad about this. He's 92 years old. He boxed for Teton High School. He played football for Teton High School. And you know what he said to me? He said, I feel like I've been punched in the guts. And I feel the same way, and so does 90% of these people here. Punched in the guts because you take something away from us that's been here for years and years and years. And you think you're big enough to do that. And I hope you're not, but I don't know. And I could say that because in a way, I'm related to you. But Alvin Dowley came here in 1958. And he set a bunch of high school kids down, and he said, you know what? He said, you're going on a journey now, and it's going to be like when Indians come into fruition as a young man. They were sent out as young men, and they were sent out to do certain things and bring them back. And if they did that, then they were warriors. And Alvin said, you know, you guys are going to do the same thing. You're going to be sent out all by yourself on that mat, and what happens out there and you bring back is going to be the thing that's going to make this worthwhile. And it made it worthwhile for a lot of years. And we were the Redskins, and we fought like hell. And we won. We won a lot. And you got the audacity to take that away from us. I just can't believe you can do that. History? What is this place? It's called Pierre's Hole. Why is it Pierre's Hole? Because it's where the rendezvous come. It's where they did the wrestling with the...
My name is Paris Penfold, and I spent, I think it's close to 26 years. Of being a two-ton racer. I guess I have pride in tradition. And I pray that that's what you're doing to our community and our high school. There's ruining a tradition, a great tradition at Teton Valley. I think we're actually paying tribute to those people who live here, those Indians that are here, who live here. We do away with the Teton Redskins. What else? There's nothing else. What else is there that commemorates the heritage of the Indians that live here? We talked a little bit about being offensive. And that's kind of what I've heard, and I know we don't want to be offensive. I think, Monty, I think, and maybe that's offensive, but I think you're very brave to have tried to do this. I hope the Indians in here that don't take offense that I use brave doing that, but I'm just concerned that we're losing one of our freedoms one step at a time. First of all, they say, oh, well, we better do away with prayer because there's a few people that here that don't want prayer in the schools. Then we can't even sing a Christmas song or do anything for Christmas. So they take that away from us. You know, I went in and talked to my mom is 91 and she's 87. And I'm not going to repeat because it would probably offend somebody of what my mom thought about us changing the name of Redskins. Let me just ask you, if you approached, let's approach a group of members of the Mormon Church and say, walk up to them and say, are you offended when you stand by somebody that's swearing and cussing and everything? Well, what are they going to say to you? Well, yeah, we're offended. But you know what? They have the right to say that. They have the right to swear and cuss. It's what my father in World War II fought for. It's for our freedoms. And every time we're just trying to say one more freedom. It just seems like we're just taking things away from us one little bit at a time. And we're so, oh my gosh, we're so offended over this. Well, you know what? That's what our fathers fought for. That's why we live in this great country. It's for our freedom to be able to say and do and act the way we are. And I think you get the same result from a bunch of Mormons if you say, well, are you offended? Well, sure, they don't say they're offended. But I'll bet most of them, it depends on how you ask the question to start with. I'm a little concerned. I know you've already met with the tribals and talked to them before you talk to any of the people that are actually paying for the school district and getting your funds from. I'm a little offended also by doing that. Why didn't you talk to us first before you went to the Indian tribe, who was really the only reason why you went to them to see whether or not they were going to be offended for it? And they're offended. Well, I just hope that we learn something tonight. That we got to understand, yes, that, you know, we're not always going to be politically correct. Somebody's going to be offended. You choose. I choose
you each choose to be offended. It isn't because of me. And I know a great and important person that said that same thing. We choose to take offense. So let's put it on their backs. Well, you know, I'm just as offended as they are because you're trying to take tradition away from me. So I mean, offense isn't the whole reason why we should be doing this. We should say, hey, we've got something great. We've got a tradition. The Penfold name, as far as potatoes, that's why my two sons are back here farming. Because I want to pass on that tradition. Because my grandfather lived in Teton Valley, and he was a seed potato farmer. It's tradition. And I feel the same strength, I feel the same way about the Teton Redskins. I think we're just throwing money at something that's really not that important. So I hope you really reconsider maybe that decision you've already made. And I have a really hard time thinking that the school board shouldn't be involved in making that decision and have to vote on that. They're the elected people that we elected. You are our representatives. So a decision like this that is so controversial probably should, as far as I'm concerned, you should have been talked to and you should have to vote on that. And then you should be held a little bit more accountable. Man, you're just saying, whoo, Bonnie, he's going to take off the vote on this. So you are very great for doing this, but I hope you will reconsider. Thank you.
With honor and pride. I recognize that some would view it as merely a title, but to me, and I believe I speak for many student athletes, we were taught to be a Redskin meant more. As an athlete from this school, it was unwritten but expected that you would represent not only yourselves, but the team, the coaches, the student body, your family, the boosters, and the community. This representation was embodied in the Redskin name. We were Redskins and were expected to act with honor, pride, respect, and heart. A little thing about heart. As a school, we never had the largest or the fastest athletes, but we conducted ourselves in a manner that not only represented ourselves, but the student athletes of years past. You see, the discussion each year was that this was the year the Redskins would finally lose. And yet, we would stand up and represent, taking district and state titles every year. In addition to winning these titles, we would also win the Sportsmanship Award. We represented more. Speaking of the name Redskin, its original meaning had nothing to do with disrespect or dishonor. Rather, it was inspired by the Europeans and used to describe the Algonquins, of which I am a descendant, who painted their faces with bright red ochre and bloodroot, thereby making their face red with war paint. Contrary to popular misguided opinion, the name Redskin was never meant to imply anything other than the color of war paint. And in fact, studies have been conducted finding that less than 18% of Native Americans are offended by the use of Indian mascots. An article written on the subject in Sports Illustrated stated the following: asked if high school and college teams should stop using Indian nicknames, 81% of Native American respondents said no. Respondents said teams should not stop using Indian nicknames, mascots, characters, and symbols. The Redskin image, similar to what is used at this high school, and which I have on my shirt, itself is of a proud chief, and it bestows pride and accomplishment. Unfortunately, some may truly be offended by the Redskin name. Most would be offended if their heritage was disrespected or made fun of. But we have not done that at this school, and we will not do that at this school. I believe, and hear me out here, I believe we have an opportunity here that rarely comes along in a lifetime. An opportunity to sit our young people down, and rather than cower to political correctness, which is one of the great evils of our day, we can teach them that they represent more, and they need to conduct themselves with honor and respect. We are called Redskins. This is what we represent. I am honored to be called a Redskin, and I would ask the Native Americans throughout this country, and particularly here in Idaho, hear my plea when I say, please allow us to continue to represent and honor you. By carrying the Redskin name into the future, we are not cowards. As some of our presidents have displayed, we will rise above, and we are capable of continuing to bring honor to your name. My name is Ryan Douglas, and I am a Redskin.
Any personal attacks, but your decision was your decision, therefore all the comments are necessarily directed to you. So please don't be offended by what I said. Perception is 80% of reality, and you really made this a real issue. Now, I'm retired military. I was enlisted for 20 years in the military, defending our freedoms and defending our Constitution, primarily with the First Amendment in mind. Other amendments come to mind, but I won't spend time on that. Following my military career, I worked in the Washington, D.C. area for 17 years as a defense contractor. I know what racism is. I've been on the streets of D.C. with weapons, defending curfews, working with the Metropolitan Police. I know what racism is. I've worked with all races of people in the military and in the Department of Defense. I know what racism is. We don't have a racism problem here in Teton County. Or at least we didn't until you brought it. I know what political correctness is doing to our country. And I'm sure most all of you, if not all of you, know what political correctness is doing to our country. And I resent the fact that you are implying that we are racist because we're honoring a tribe of Indians, or many Indians, who people happen to call Redskins. But I don't think redskin is necessarily a skin color. Redskins, as far as the people here are concerned, I think, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but Redskins here is not a color. It's an icon. It's an honor. It's what people want to be. It's not a racist term at all. People are proud to be called Redskins. Now, my dad is part Blackfoot Indian. He was a potato farmer out in Mud Lake. His dad was a potato farmer out there too. He's part Indian. And all the times we visited this area, there was never any derogatory implication about Indians or their heritage or the heritage that we find in this country. I don't want to take any more time, but I will just say that please reconsider your decision. I think it's been misdirected. We don't want to bring what's happened at the national stage to our local community. And we certainly don't want to create a problem where there hasn't been a problem before. Thank you.
Let's get off this area for a little bit. Washington, D.C., Reg Roberts. What about the Washington Redskins? Do you remember the Washington Bullets? They changed their name. They were an NBA basketball team, and now they're the Washington Wizards. But the owner of the Washington Redskins, why has that name not been changed? Democrats ran Congress for 6 years. They attacked him, so he did a national study. Mr. Douglas at 81%, he found over 90% looked at it as an honor. NFL, Riggins, Washington Redskins. I was a Morgan Trojan. Are they going to yank that from me in a Weber State Wildcat? What are you going to call the new mascots? Trappers? Skunks? Has anybody thought about this? We've got 13 state championships in wrestling in a row. One person is not this community. Watching the taxation that's coming on, watching the school bonds that continually get passed, you get what you want. You need to understand. I had 5 children graduate. I had a kid wrestling for the state championship. I had a kid that led the state of Idaho 7.7 yards a carry. He was a Teton Redskin. This is not an insult. When I was a Morgan Trojan, I was proud to be a Trojan. We wrestled the Intermountain Indian School. And I'm telling you, we went in there, and it was a dogfight. I wrestled to get a 3-time state champ that was 26 years old, no birth certificates. They can't prove that on one. It's just a fact of life. But I've never seen a more prideful people. When we went in there, I've never seen a more prideful people. You know, you need to wake up. You created something here you shouldn't have created. Contention is the adversary. Why do you want contention? What is the new mascot? If you decide to get rid of the old one, you've got something in the back of your head. We have come to these meetings continually, planning and zoning, and nothing gets done by our comments. We are the taxpayers. We are the ones that give you the money. You are government employees. And I don't know why you guys would want to come in and take the community and say, we're going to let the Redskins. It's an honor. Washington Redskins, Washington, D.C., right in Congress. You read the Constitution up here earlier. When you two got sworn in today, Washington tried to get rid of it. Washington, D.C., they can't. They're still the Washington Redskins. It's an honor. It's not a disgrace. It's not any smear. It's people look up to the Teton Redskins.
First of all, I'm Terry Fulmer. I've lived here off and on most of my life. I was born and raised here, and I moved back because I love this community. And the more I live here, the more it gets changed and the less I can love it. You're not helping things, Monty. You're not helping any of us. I have a heritage of the Teton Redskins. My dad's 92 years old. My mother's 90. And my father-in-law's 86, and every one of them were Redskins. I was a Redskin, my husband was a Redskin, every one of my children were Redskins. Every one of my parents' children were Redskins. Every one of my parents' brothers and sisters were Redskins. And you're trying to take that all away from us because you think somebody might be offended. Well, should you change every name if somebody's offended by it? This is my thought, you know. I know some Wilson homes that I'm related to that are offended by what you're doing and offended that you're a Wilson home. Are you going to change your name because of that? I don't think so. I'm sorry it's an attack on you, but you're the one that's doing it. You're the one that wants to change it all. I have a daughter-in-law who is an Indian. I have 3 grandchildren, should have been 4, but I have 3 grandchildren that I would give my life for, that are part Indians. And every one of my family would give their life for them, because they're our relatives. They're part Indian. But we all still want to be Redskins. Every one of us. Thank you.
Idea, and I was student body president, so I've been really involved in the school. And I think if it didn't happen now, it would happen later, and people are always going to be opposed to change. So I'll think you boo me all you want, but I'm just saying my opinion. I think people are always supposed to change, and I don't really have like a huge opinion either way on the actual mascot, but I think a lot of people do, and a lot of schools are doing this. And I think a lot of students agree with me, even though I don't think the ones in this room do. But yeah, basically and also I think the whole like it's destroying history thing is not necessarily true. Because like I graduated and I was a Redskin, I'll still be a Redskin. Everybody that graduated a Redskin is still a Redskin. I mean, maybe the new classes won't be, but I don't think that takes anything away from you. Yeah, you don't have to clap for me or anything, but it's just, that is what I think.
My name is Jared Hill. I graduated from Teton High in 1991. I participated in the athletic program. I actually went to school with Teton. I like you. In fact, I like all of you. I am just thoroughly annoyed that we're changing, and you guys are like, you're kind of ramrod. You especially, I mean, it's been said that the unilateral decision that you made, and I hope that you have felt a little bit heavier the weight that you actually, the decision that you made. I didn't prepare anything, I just want to stand up and say a few things. The difference between the last individual that spoke and the first, however many that did speak, is heart, is heritage. My family helped carve this valley into what it is. And several of these people who live here, their families moved here and built what was here and helped carve it into what it is, only to see it become something that we would have ran from, or something that they had ran from. It's very disheartening. I have 6 kids, and I honestly have thought several times, you know what, I don't know that I want my kids to go to this school. I have. I've honestly thought, you know what, maybe I should take my kids and go to a community that actually has less of this influence in it. And this right here is the nail. I mean, it's the final nail, man. I mean, honestly, what are you going to call it? What are you going to call it? You know what I mean? My boy's a senior this year. He's going to be a state champion wrestler. From the time he was 5 years old, we have been going, and we have been working, and we have been putting in the effort. He was very close this year. This next year, I don't want him being a state champion for the Trappers. You know what I'm saying? I mean, what a freaking put down. I really hope you haven't, because if you have, there's definitely bigger problems here than just the name. And we definitely will have to band together and fix this, because it can't happen anymore. But I hope that you reconsider. I still want to like you.
it's obviously apparent, right? We all have Redskin pride, right? I'm not really going to talk about that. I'm just going to leave two things with you. Two questions that I want you to ponder, right? So, how are you justifying the expense of this after you came to all of us, right here in this community, and said, hey, we need your help, right? I need you to pass this bond because we're not getting enough money. I was at the meeting, so I know. So how are you justifying that in your mind after we did this for you? And next, right? How do you expect any of us, if you do this, to trust you and help you when you need us again?
Respectful, responsible, and ready. These words hang in every building in this district. Sorry, I'm Nola Bradall. And this is respectful, responsible, and ready is what Teton School District strives to teach its students in every single building. I interpret this as respectful for all members of the human race, responsible of our own actions, and ready to be lifelong learners. This February, Doug George Contineo, member of the Mohawk tribe, describes how skins removed from Native Americans have been used as book covers and leggings for hunters. He goes on to explain how this act of skinning Native Americans continued across the frontier. And in the early 1830s, acts of terror meant to instill fear and drive Native Americans from coveted lands. This undermined the dignity, pride, self-assurance of his people. Tina Holder of Mesa, Arizona, wrote this year that when Native Americans hear the term Redskins, they don't see a football team. They don't see a game being played or any honor. Instead, they see bloody pieces of scalps hacked off of men, women, and children. They hear screams of their people who were killed and skinned like animals. So who are we as European Americans, African Americans, Mexican Americans, to tell the Native Americans what they should interpret as respectful and prideful, or else as derogatory and offensive? How would we feel if it were our ancestors who had been skinned like wild animals and then used as everyday products? Please let me have my turn, you've had yours.
Hey.
Or to have their scalps turned in for money as bounty.
Just a minute, Noah. Please be respectful of other people. That's a civil thing to do. Please.
I do not believe that the Teton Redskins mascot was ever intended to be an insult. I do believe the community feels the mascot is instilling pride and honor, but we're at a juncture. As an educational community, together at Teton School District 401, we can choose to be lifelong learners and demonstrate to our children what that means. We can show our children by example what it means to be respectful, responsible, and ready, and show that this isn't always an easy task. Respectful means acknowledging our own unintended but still existing lack of respect for Native Americans. Responsible means looking into the future and teaching our children that they must acknowledge and be responsible for their own actions. Ready means to be a living example of what it means to be a lifelong learner. Learning isn't always easy. It often challenges our beliefs, our desires, but it's a powerful skill and tool that we can give our children. I do believe that we can work together to create a mascot that is respectful, responsible, and ready for all. Thank you.
Mr. Douglas, microphone.
Yes, thank you. Jim Douglas. Raise the microphone. It's all right. Everybody will hear, whether it's good or bad. I'm really sorry for the fact that we're here where we're at. I don't believe that this is where we want it to be. I'm not saying that the Redskin, personally, I'm not offended by it. I don't think, as my son said, 81% of them aren't offended by him. Oh, he did mention that I have Indian heritage, didn't he? I'm not offended by it. But the process we went through to get to here was way wrong. I don't believe that this was Mr. Wilson Holmes' call. I believe that if you look in the Teton High School policy manual, it will say, we are Teton Redskins. When we say policy, that becomes board issue. When Mr. Wilson made this decision, it became board, not interest, but you have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. And I hope it's sooner than later before this valley gets divided worse than it already is. I know what you're going through, funding. I do know that. And for you folks that don't know that, I spent 13 years on this school board right up here. You figure out how many meetings that was. How many meetings do I attend? And this is the worst meeting I have ever attended for something that was pertaining to education. Absolutely the worst. In 13 years. We have a school district that is in financial disaster. Bar none. We are. We can't afford school buildings repair. We can't afford textbooks. We can't afford technology. We can't work on our test scores. We're low. We have schools 8 years without AYP. Most of those folks don't know what that means. I do. AYP. Annual Yearly Progress. 8 years, we haven't made it. This is what we should be interested in. I really, honestly, I don't care what the Chauvin Indians thought of our Redskin name. They didn't come to me and ask me what I thought about their casino being built. They didn't. I'm sorry. I promised to try to be positive. But that's how I feel. Here's my biggest frustration. And I'm going to direct this at you, Monty, and I'm sorry. Monty, you're the one I picked to lead us into the future. And I had no idea we would be right here today. And I have deep regrets.
I'm Rick Fuller, and I want to be a Redskin.
I'm Kay Fulmer, and I'd like to second everything that Jim said. I was also on the school board for 9 years, and I feel like that when Monty came in, when he did, and said he was doing it, our school board failed us. The school board should have said, all right, sit down, we're going to go through the proper steps. That was not the proper steps. Anyway, I second everything Jim said, and I'd like to address, through the museum, we have a lot of histories in of our early pioneers. And a lot of the histories tell about the Native Americans that come in here and how they was friends of the early pioneers, how their kids played together. I can't see how we could be anything but prideful to be a Redskin.
My name is Nathan Temple, and I am a Redskin.
I'm going to try to speak from my head, but I don't know if my heart will let me do that. I respect and appreciate each one of you for being here tonight. Some of you are family, many of you are friends, neighbors, classmates, some of the teachers and coaches that I had in high school, some of the people that were parents to me growing up, and I was in their home with their kids. I deeply value my heritage to this community that goes back 5, 6 generations. I acknowledge I am from 4 generations of people that have worked for or served in a position in this school district. I don't take my job or my responsibility lightly at all. Let me just answer a couple of concerns about a few points. First of all, the cost. The number of $100,000. A reporter was asking me afterwards if you changed everything with the mascot over the summer, what would that be? So I was thinking about, well, the signs in the high school, the athletic uniforms, that's mainly where you see the mascot printed for Teton High School. If you take all of that and change it this summer, my estimate would be about $100,000. To change the signs in this school where you see the name Redskins is about $1,700. There's probably $200 or $300 that we would need to spend on a few other scoreboards to paint or remark the few other places where the Redskin name is at. I've tried to compare Teton High School to a lot of other schools, and not only do I see many of you at the athletic events where your children and your grandchildren and nieces and nephews proudly represent Teton High School, I see it as my job to be at everything as much as I can. So I don't just go to my own kids' events. I go to the rodeo and to the wrestling match, and especially to state wrestling when one of the most famous, well-known attributes of Teton High School is our wrestling team. And I, too, still fear Coach Daly. And I'm a taxpayer. And I support the bonds and the levies that go into the school district. And I feel responsible for the budget and trying to manage cuts that are coming at us from the feds and from the state, and often brag to about 25 other superintendents in eastern Idaho how amazing Teton County is. And they're blown away by the amount of support that we get and the budget that we're able to keep in hiring more teachers, more counselors, more principals, more administrators than what the state funds us. So I want to thank you for that, and I feel like I'm a part of this. In reaching out to the Native American tribes, it was an effort to be simply respectful of others. Redskins, it's a name of Native Americans. And that when we met with the Chauvin tribe leadership, they offered their support, and we've got a letter saying they support the change. That speaking for the tribe, they find the name offensive. I'm not making a judgment on anybody who has been raised here, who has graduated from this high school. I am a part of that connection. So it was interesting to me to kind of test this decision, and 2 of the big tribes in Idaho supported it. When I reviewed it with the admin team, which is the principals of each of the schools, and asked them their opinion, and shared the reasoning behind this, they were supportive and saw the need to make the change. When I shared it with the school board last month, the 5 of them listened to the reasoning and the main points that I had behind this decision in an effort to reinforce the idea and the value of teaching respect for others. not a judgment on the past, on alumni, on people who have a deep connection to our high school, about our responsibility for what we're trying to do with our students today. We have a more diverse and more challenging community and world than ever that we're sending our students out to. Many of the students that we get from your homes are the easy ones because they have parents that are home when they get off the bus or when you pick them up from school. And they have chores and responsibility. And they rarely to never, ever go in the principal's office. And sometimes the principals would be hard-pressed to know their name, especially when they get to the middle school and high school, because they're not the ones that are causing problems. They're the ones that are working hard and being respectful. But from that, I've taken notes. Luckily, I didn't have to ask others your names. I know almost everybody. So the 67 people that spoke tonight, there were 3 that were in favor of the change, 2 that were neutral, and everyone else was opposed. That's something that I have to listen to. I am not better than anybody else, and I get up and I go to work trying to prove to the school board and this community that I'm worth half of what you're paying me. And I say no to a lot of meetings and a lot of opportunities to go to Boise and spend a lot of time doing whatever happens in Boise, because that's not my priority. That's not what is important. It's Teton Valley, and it's Teton School District, and it's the people that are paying taxes and the people that employ you. I'm accountable to you. I think very seriously about the 1,650 students that I'm responsible for every day they come to school. The 225 staff members that I'm accountable for their job performance, from what I expect and what the community expects. And I feel responsible every time I get the honor to stand up for a couple minutes at graduation and recognize our graduates for their scholarships and their accomplishments and how they're going to take the world on and do great things. So that being said, I do have to listen. And I would be an idiot to not listen. I've been trying to listen to the people that I've been gathering information from. That is especially dramatically, passionately visible tonight. By you taking the time away from your families, away from your activities, away from your jobs and farms and ranch, and all the beautiful things that make Teton Valley a special place, to come and share your opinion. In my heart and in my mind, this is the right decision to make, simply in trying to be respectful of other people. That's the only reason behind this. But I'm also ready to take time and listen. And there's nothing saying we have to do this now. I felt it was a good time to do it, to have the discussion over the summer, and allow the high school to work through the process. But I also think when decisions are made that have a big impact on a lot of people, and that's the reality of these meetings and what happens with this school board, when we have the opportunity to take time and listen, we should take that opportunity. So that being said, that will be my recommendation to the board, is we take time on this decision. Even in my heart and mind, I believe it's the right thing to do. I do think we should take time to work through this and make sure we have looked at as much information as we can. We can listen to as many people as we can, and we take that process seriously and respectfully of the people who live in this community and make this a special place to call home.
said, I'll give the board members an opportunity to speak. Mrs. Arnold?
Well, I'd like to